Let me explain something to you. Frugality is not cheap, it's wise. You want to know why I'm saying this? Get ready to tune in. Let's go.
The Debt Demolisher TV with Sophia Melone.
Hi, everyone. It's Sophia Melone, the Debt Demolisher, here to bring you the tools, tips, and tricks to help you manage your financial baggage the right way. I want to welcome you back to another day of the Business Profit series, where we are jumping in and deep diving into the book Profit First. We are now on day 10 of the series, and I'm super excited that you are here and that you have came back. Now we're going to jump right into it because I'm actually going to be giving you overviews on 2 chapters. So remember, I said that I wanted us to pick back up. I gave y'all a break. Now we're going to have to make up for it, but it's still not going to be too heavy. I'm still going to make sure that I piecemeal it good enough for you guys to be able to receive it, break it down. But I do have intentions on getting through this entire book before the month ends. So in order to do that, we're going to have to double up and touch on 2 chapters. Now, here's the thing. The good part about what we're going to be covering today is chapter 9 and chapter 10 of the book. Now, I will say this, because chapter 9 of the Profit First book really talks about advanced tactics, advanced strategies, advanced techniques for you to be able to implement as it relates to the Profit First model. It really goes in depth and really goes into add-on features and add-on junctions that you can include or you can begin to incorporate in your business. The caveat is you're not expected to put this piece in motion until you've been operating by the Profit First model for maybe 6 months or 9 months or more. So because we just started the series, and because y'all just getting into this work, and because we're only 10 days in, I know that there is no way, shape, or form that you guys are going to be ready to jump into the advanced techniques. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give a brief, high-level golden nugget that I received out of the chapter. And then as a bonus, what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back. Come closer. Come closer. I'm going to come back and I'm going to do a series specifically on the Profit First advanced techniques just for you. But here's the caveat. The only way that I'm going to do it is if you come back to this video 6 months from today and say, okay, I've implemented Profit First. I'm seeing the change. It's working for me. What about the advanced techniques that you said that you were going to come back and do? I'm ready for it. So when you're ready for it, let me know. And that will give me the light bulb to say, okay, they ready. They ready. And we're going to drop a video on it. We're going to do a series on it. So for chapter 9, my key takeaway from this piece was the section that talked about shifting your focus and shifting your mindset from the monthly nut, or AKA the monthly expense amount that you have to be able to meet each month. Instead of looking at it from that perspective and focusing on the expenses, he's saying that you need to focus on the actual income amount or the revenue amount that you need to meet. So the word or the acronym that he utilizes to explain this piece is RIFA, and that is RIFA. And what that stands for is required income for allocation. So what he's trying to get us to see is that we should focus on the income or the revenue amount that we need, as opposed to the amount of expenses that we have to pay out. This, you guys, is a game changer, because I really feel like what you focus your attention on is what you will attract. So if we're constantly thinking about the expenses that we have to pay, if we're constantly thinking about how short we are in the hole based on the expenses that we currently have, we're constantly focused on expenses, expenses, expenses. What do you think is going to mature? What do you think is going to extrapolate? Those expenses. So the more you focus on the expenses that you have, the more expenses that you'll probably end up incurring. So what Mike is trying to introduce in this chapter is allowing us to focus our mind and shift our mindset to focus on the resources, to focus on the sales, to focus on the revenue and the strategies in which whereby we're going to be leveraging those strategies to generate the income. So if we shift our perspective to look at where we are dollar-wise in terms of what we need in order to meet those allocations, remember your 5 foundational accounts. And if you into the advanced tactics, there are a couple of more breakouts that he talks about within that. But again, that's going to be for future conversation once you get there 6 to 9 months from now. But thinking about the amount of income that you need, or the goal or the allocation percentage that you need to meet your income needs, I think that's really going to allow us to really stretch ourselves and think out of the box in terms of how we are operating our businesses and the services and the products that we are delivering through our businesses, as opposed to just thinking about how am I going to meet this monthly expense? How am I going to do this? So we're going to be shifting our mindset to focus on the revenue. We're going to be shifting our mindset to focus on the income. And we're going to do that by focusing on the percentages that have been allocated, number one, for owner's compensation, which will subsequently automatically impact the percentage and the amount that will drive the income bucket. So remember our 5 foundational accounts. We have the income, we have the profit, we have the owner's compensation, we have the tax account, and then we have our operating expense account. So what he's shifting and allowing us to really focus on is looking at the driver. So the driver of the income that we will need is, of course, based on how much we need as the business operators, as the business owner, as the business investor, owner's compensation, and then taking that percentage based on what was allocated there to figure out what our top revenue line needs to be. I know he doesn't really like to use the top line approach, but if we think about it from real revenue, we'll just call it that, like he said, what our real revenue is supposed to be. So when you look at your percentages and you look at your expectations, and then you know exactly how much you need in terms of the owner's compensation bucket, that, my friends, is going to really help you determine and do the math. So he does give the calculation inside of the book to give you clear examples on what that would look like. So let's say, for instance, your required expenses, you as the business owner, not for your business, but you as the operator and the owner of the business, how much you need in order to sustain your livelihood, not your business's livelihood, but your livelihood, your personal livelihood. What are your personal required income amounts that you need to be able to take care of your family? So let's say, for example, you need roughly $14,000 a month to be able to manage your household. The example that Mike is sharing, in order to figure out what your bi-weekly or your semi-monthly income or your target goal should be in terms of what that number needs to be, is you take that $14,000 and you divide it by 2. And we're dividing it by 2 because you essentially are getting paid twice a month. So if you take that $14,000, you divide it by 2, that's going to give you $7,000. Now, what Mike is saying is take that $7,000 that you need on a bi or a semi-monthly basis, and then multiply that by your owner's compensation percentage. Remember, we did allocation percentages. So what was your owner's compensation percentage? If you're just starting out and you feel like, okay, I don't have enough to calculate, or my owner's compensation percentage was 0, so at this point it's at 1%, my recommendation would be to use your target allocated percentage. So your TAP. So if you use your TAP, and let's say, for instance, your TAP is 50%, because based on where you are, if you use the standard numbers that he had within this table, depending on what your revenues are, 50% will be owner's equity. So we're going to go with that. So let's say your owner's compensation percentage is 50%. So you're going to take that 50%, you're going to divide the 7,000 by the 50% to figure out what is the number that you need twice per month. So remember the days that we talked about, the 10th and the 25th. So if you're still going to be following the 10th and the 25th, that's 2 days. So if you take that That's going to give you your multiple of 2. And then that is going to let you know by dividing the 7,000 by the 50% or whatever your allocation percentage is, that's going to get you to the targeted amount that you need to earn in terms of real revenue each time you sit down to do your 10 and your 25th of the month allocations and checks and payouts for your operating expenses. So he's allowing us to devise what our goal is. He's allowing us to identify what our targeted income needs to be, so that way we can work backwards. So I feel like this calculation was really huge for me. And I know you're probably going to be thinking, okay, that's $14,000. You're saying I need to be able to get $14,000 in real revenue by the 10th and the 25th of each month. How in the world am I going to do that? That is where, if we focus on what we need, the resolution, the solution, the ideas, the compensation, all of that will come to us. And I think that's why he's talking so much about efficiency and trying to see how can we streamline on things, how can we do more with less, and not only how can we do more with less, but how can we give more or receive more by doing less as well. So we're going to try to do this thing twofold and look at this as a twofold conversation. If we want to have a specific goal that we need to reach, we need to focus on the goal that we need to reach and not necessarily the hindrances. So the hindrances, in my opinion, are the lavish expenses that we may have to run our business. And if we think about it, when we see those expenses, it also gives us like a negative energy, especially when we don't have enough to cover it. We're focusing on like, oh my gosh, I have to pay this, or oh my gosh, this charge is getting ready to come. Who's going to pay for it? I don't have enough income in the door to pay for this thing. You're focusing on the wrong thing. We want to be focusing on, well, how can we get the income that we need? And by doing that, you set your eyes on a target. You set your eyes on the bullseye. You set your eyes on the amount. You set your eyes on the real revenue that you need or that you're striving for. Granted, you may not hit the full ballpark as soon as you go out of the loop, but it's all about taking steps and being intentional about where you want to be so that you can take action steps and make needle point moves in order for you to be able to get there. Now, like I said all the time, I'm talking to y'all, but I'm talking to me. I am talking to me right now because I know that this is factual and that this is truth. So from chapter 9, what I want you guys to really take out of this conversation is to identify what your real revenue number needs to be. Identify what your real revenue number needs to be based on the income allocation, and not only that, the owner's compensation allocation that you need in order to sustain your personal required income. All right, next up, let's jump into chapter 10. Chapter 10 is talking about how to incorporate and how to embody profit first as a lifestyle. So the chapter is called Profit First Life, or The Profit First Life. And he basically kind of talks about different stories in terms of what people have done and how they've allowed the profit first model to really work for them, not only in their business, but also in their life. So what Mike really wants us to consider is to make profit first a lifestyle. And this is something that I always say, and I say this a lot when I'm speaking at different conferences, or I may be speaking to business owners, I may be doing personal coaching, I may be doing facilitation, depends on what it is. But let me tell you something, especially when I'm speaking in rooms with entrepreneurs and business owners, I always say that whatever habits you have in your personal finances will transcend over into your business finances. And there is a line that Mike actually says in here that kind of speaks verbatim to what I said. So I'm going to read it from page 165 right now. It says, if you own a business, your personal financial health is in lockstep with the financial health of your business. So essentially, that's the same thing that I say. Whatever you do in your personal business or whatever you do in your personal finances, you're going to end up doing it in your business finances. There is a correlation. And the reason why there is a correlation is because the habits, it's driven by your behavior. It's driven by what you know. It's driven by what you do. It's driven by what you are accustomed to doing. So if you aren't willing to change your habits, so if you are constantly operating in one state, form, or fashion on one end of the stick, of course, you're going to operate on that same end of the spectrum on the other side of the stick. So what he's encouraging here is to incorporate the profit first model into your personal finances. And when I tell you guys, when I got to this chapter and I got to this page, I was like, he is so on point, because he has never lied, because every single step that he has in this section of the book is the exact same thing that I have done and that I'm continuing to do in order to eradicate and eliminate. I'm almost at $345,000 of debt that I've paid off. So when I tell you guys that it is possible, I'm here to tell you that it is possible. These strategies that he is sharing, I've already said it from the beginning. Everything that he's saying about profit first, I was like, dang, I did all of this stuff on my personal side. I did all of this stuff on my personal side. Now, the question I have for myself is, well, why didn't I start doing this on my business side? Like, why was it so hard for me to be able to pick it up and say, oh, let me start doing what I'm doing on my personal side, on my business side, because I see that it has results. But it took me picking up this book for it to really click for me to be like, oh, okay, I need to take those same behaviors and model it over here, which is why we're doing this work, which is why we're reading this book, which is why I'm going through this chapter with you guys, or I'm going through these chapters with you guys, even though it was recommended by subscribers. So thank you so much, CW, for recommending and suggesting that I do this, because this is actually some powerful stuff that we're doing right now. So thank you. Shout out to you. But if you have the book and you're looking on page 166, every single step that he has in this book about applying the profit first model to your personal finances, I have done. Every single step. And not only that, every single one of those steps have been somewhat incorporated into the debt demolishing series. I'm going to link the playlist right here so that you can check it out if you have not done so. It is there. So the information is there and the resources is there. Now, I will say this, there was one thing that I didn't quite agree with, because there was some implications to the credit score side. And y'all know I don't play about my credit, but basically he was saying something about to remove the temptation from you using your personal cards. You know, you put yourself on a credit card freeze, and as you pay down your credit card debt, you're going to call your company and ask them to reduce your credit limit. As soon as he said that, I was like, I said, if you do that, it's going to ruin your credit score. But let me share with you what was very interesting, what he said as I read on the next page. And I just had to laugh about it, because I was like, huh? Because as soon as I read that, I immediately was like, no, I'm not doing that, because I don't play when it comes to my credit. I need to keep my credit above 800. But then he said on the next page, for those of you who may say, but Mike, if I drop my credit line, my debt to credit limit ratios will fall out of favor with lenders, and then my interest rates will go up. So Mike says, who cares? He said, the goal here is to remove financial stress from your life by eradicating debt, not to get better interest rates on more debt. He said, we can worry about improving your credit score once you are debt free. So this is interesting, because let's be clear and let's be frank and let's be honest. If you pay off all of your debt, I mean, like all of it, and you have no debt, let me tell you something, you won't have a credit score, honey child, because your credit score is going to dwindle and go all the way down, because the lenders, they have no way to really base your ability to repay. Granted, if you've already had like open accounts and things of that nature, let's say you have all of these different accounts and you pay them off, your score is going to drop. I had a client that one time had mentioned that to me. They paid off one of their debts, and she was like, oh my gosh, my score dropped. And I had to explain to her that there are different elements that you need to be able to have in order to keep your credit score healthy. So if you want a healthy credit score, if you want to remain 800 and above, if you want to remain in that club, you have to realize that debt is going to be on the table some way, some shape, or some form. You just have to be strategic on how you want to leverage the debt that you are acquiring. Now, I do a whole separate training on credit. I do a whole separate training on algorithm studies. That is not public really that I do here. I do that in private settings or in my credit improvement workshop. So that's a whole different conversation, but there is elements to this thing, and you really got to be strategic around how you work around that area. But nonetheless, when I read that, I was like, no, I don't play, so I'm not going to be messing around calling them, telling them to reduce my limit. I ain't doing that, because I know that that's going to tear my credit score up, and that's not what I want. So again, remember, you want to make sure that it's personal for you as much as you can. I can flow with the other strategies. I can kind of go with the other strategies, but I still want my credit score to remain intact. Okay. Okay. So as a continuation onto that, once you've been able to embody the profit first model into your personal lifestyle, and you've been able to do that, he's basically saying now you want to lock in your lifestyle. And how do you do that? He gives 5 steps or 5 intricate details in terms of how you can make sure that you lock in your lifestyle. And one of those is always start with the free option. So you may not have done this before, but I know that this is something that I always do. I always do trials first. Like I don't opt in and pay right away for certain things, depending on what it is. So I want to test it out to see if it's something that I'm actually going to use, if it's useful, if it's profitable, if it's bringing in revenue. And then if it's not, then I'll go ahead and cut it, because I realize that it's not necessarily working for me at this time. And I don't want to be spending $99 a month, $35 a month, $65 a month for something that isn't even generating any return in terms of income or revenue coming into the door. So he's basically saying, find free ways to get what you need, or find free ways to do what you need. There's always a way for you to be able to get it done. Granted, it may cause you to perform a few more steps in order to get it done. But if you could save money in the interim by doing that, why not? So start with free. A lot of times people may think, oh, well, that's cheap if you're couponing and you're trying to do all of these things and you're trying to cut here and you're slashing here and you're doing all of these workarounds. Listen, being frugal is not cheap. Frugality is not cheap. Frugality does not mean that you're being cheap. What it means is you're being wise. Not only are you being wise, you are being thoughtful, you are being innovative, and you are figuring out the kinks of seeing how you can work this thing out so that it can work for your benefit. So don't think about the extra step as being a cheap method or you're being cheap. I know people used to tell me that all the time when I started my journey. Oh, you being cheap? Yeah, I'm being cheap, but now I'm getting out of debt. So what you doing? You know what I'm saying? I'm just being honest and I'm just keeping it real, because you have to think about what you need for your space, because I always say this, that no one else is paying your bills. And until they come in and they pay your bills, until they come in and they're responsible for the things that you're responsible for, they have no say so over what you do with your money. They have no say so over what you do with the income that you earn. So you have to think about you being wise in how you utilize your resources, you being wise on how you spend. Why would you spend on something that you can get for free? Tell me, why would you spend on something that you can get for free? The same concept goes with buying something new versus buying something used. Now, I'm going to say this. I don't really like to get a whole lot of used stuff. I'm just going to keep it all the way 100. I'm going to keep it all the way 100. But that's one of his steps. He's basically saying, like, if you can get it used at a cheaper price, then why not get it used? You know, it's still going to, because once you buy it, it's going to be used anyway, because it's going to be used by you. That's one of the things that he says in the book. But I just think it's really interesting of how he introduces concepts or says things that can really help you think twice about your buying decision or about your purchasing decision, because really that's what it essentially boils down to. Your ability to make sound financial decisions, your ability to make decisions that will impact you so that you can get to the scale of where you want to be. Because you have to think about it. Everything is independently goal driven based on where you are and what your desires are, not what anyone else's desires are. So you have to figure out what your target points are, what your goals are, and what you need to do based on your situation and based on your circumstances in order to help you get there quicker, faster, smarter. Now, the last thing before I let you guys go, he does introduce a concept about profit first for kids. So if you are a parent, I don't care if you are a business owner, I don't care if you're not a business owner, if you are a parent and you have a young child and you've been following along with me on this series and you've already picked up the book, I'm not even going to go over it, because what I want you to do is I want you to go to page 175 and I want you to read it for yourself. Read this page for yourself if you have young children under the ages of 18 that are still living with you. If you have young children that are under the age of 18 and they are still living with you, I urge you, I implore you, I admonish you to pick up this book and read page 175, that entire page. That alone will shift a lot of things in your perspective. And not only that, it's going to help you to cultivate leaders in your financial home. And most importantly, you're going to be teaching your children how to be effective financial stewards, because that's what this thing is all about. You got to train them up so that they can go in the right way. So if you're not willing to bring them into this conversation, if you're not willing to teach your children right now, they're going to end up like me, where I was before the age of 30, $365,000, over $365,000 worth of debt before the age of 30, because I didn't know this, because I wasn't taught this. So I want you guys to read page 175. And after you read page 175, I want you to drop your revelations down in the comments of this video. Let me know so I can make sure that you're doing your part, because I'm doing my part. You got to do your part too. All right, so that is it for today's lesson on the Business Profit series. I'm so glad that you guys are here. Make sure that you come back, because we're still diving in. We got one more day, y'all. We got one more day, and we're going to close out with a bang. And if you have not done so, or if you have not heard already, I do have the free Vet Your Spending Challenge that is starting on November the 1st. If you have not registered, make sure that you go to bit.ly/vet yours. Dropping it right here. And it's also going to be down in the description box. Click on the link, register, because I want to see you in the room. We will be streaming here live for it. But if you want the worksheets, if you want the giveaways, or if you want to be entered into the drawing for a giveaway, you got to make sure that you register, and you got to make sure that you show up. So I want to see you in the room, because each night, November the 1st through November the 30th, I'm going live for the Vet Your Spending Challenge right here on this very platform, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So register, and I want to see you in the room, and make sure that you come back as we close out with the last day of the Business Profit series on tomorrow. All right, so y'all know what to do. Get to work. Your financial prosperity awaits you, and so does your financial sanity. Bye.
The Debt Demolisher TV with Sophia Melone. The Debt Demolisher TV with Sophia Melone. The Debt Demolisher TV with Sophia